Welcome to Liz McMullen Show. I have Jerry Rabushka on. This is his first appearance on the show. It's great to have you.
I am happy to be here.
So can you tell my listeners a little bit about your book, The Prophecy?
Sure. Prophecy is a book I actually started writing almost like 30-something years ago, and there's a long story behind that, but it is a fantasy set around the year 50 AD, and it's essentially two competing religions. Each of them have a prophecy that if they don't knock the other one off the country they live in is going to fall, more or less. So obviously two groups are kind of fighting each other throughout the whole thing, and hilarity ensues, as we like to say.
Cue the chase scene. When I was reading your book, I love ancient mythology. It's always interesting when a culture goes from polytheism to a one god. In ancient Egypt, that was Aten, the sun god. Amhotep changed his name to Akhenaten, and also moved the capital city from Thebes up north to a new capital he named Akhenaten. He put up temples dedicated to the one god and pissed off a lot of people. The people who from generation to generation celebrated many gods. So what was the inspiration you said you started writing this about 30 years ago?
Yeah, the actual inspiration, I took a short story writing class in college, and we had an assignment to write short story based on a dream. And the dream I can't talk about too much because it's actually the last scene of the book. But in the dream, it was in this ancient civilization ruled by queens. And these two guys were kind of, whatever happens to them at the end was happening to them, more or less. And after I wrote this story, I thought later on, well, this could be a good novel, more or less. So I developed the whole civilization and the religious squabble kind of to lead up to the end of the book. And the thing, I guess, that intrigued me now that I think about it is, in this book, it is actually the polytheistic religion with all the gods that's really conservative and mind-numbing, and the single god is kind of like, yeah, do what you want, have a good time, it's all good by me, which usually, real world, it kind of seems to be the other way around.
Yeah, definitely. Let's see, the mythology you had with Roxy and Katarva, is that proper pronunciation? How did you come up with that?
Part of it was because in the dream, again, this whole civilization was ruled by women, and I needed to come up with a way to make it so that in the book there were only women that ruled this country. That's still pretty much a male-dominated country. So the mythology is Katarva is the main god and Roxy is his wife, and he cheated on her, so she walked away, basically, and one of her bargaining chips to come back was that only women would rule the country of Claygora, which is where this all takes place. And he was good enough with it that he let that go down.
So you're not only a writer, you're a musician as well. Can you talk a little bit about how you got started, what you're up to now? Do you compose and that kind of stuff?
I do. I started composing. Well, I started playing trumpet in grade school, and my older brother started composing, so I started composing. And let's fast forward, a long time. And I began, because I can write and compose, writing musicals. And I had a little theater company for a while. So we put on musicals with some, original music and book and music and lyrics and all that. So yeah, after the theater company closed up because the church we did the plays in also closed up, I took the musicians that did those shows and we started a band with it. And we do original stuff. I write. We do a lot of old, like 1900 and 1920s ragtime and early blues and jazz and that kind of thing. You can hear it on SoundCloud and Reverb Nation and my Facebook page and all kinds of me things.
I think I'm going to have to sample and put some of that into the final product. Get your music in there. So tell me a little bit more about Lex and Fergo.
Alrighty. Well, Lex and Fergo are the main characters in the book. They're both guys. They are not having a romantic relationship. Lex is gay. It's not really, the term gay isn't in the book because that's not how this culture would see it, but essentially he is. And he's not the leader of this revolution of this new religion, but he's kind of the guy who's the most fervent about it. And he's sort of is the mastermind of all the plots to try to overthrow the queen who is trying to kill off his religion. And he is probably the braver of the two. He gets into more trouble, more or less, and he likes young men, and that always leads to trouble, usually. Fergo is not actually of this new religion, which is called, the gods called Kavra, and they call it the Kavra cult or the divine Kavra or something like that. And Fergo never converted when his family converted, but his family and his whole town got wiped out by a bunch of soldiers. So he's, well, sad and pissed off, and he joined this new religion, the group, for revenge, basically, to try to help kill the queen as well. But he's a little more hard to work with. He's kind of afraid of things a little more. He's a little less heroic, I suppose. And Lex is always trying to convert him. He doesn't really want to convert. They wind up in jail together a lot. And the irony of the whole thing is, of course, the queen's niece, who's the beautiful woman of this thing, is in love with Lex and keeps trying to seduce him. But he claims to be disinterested in her because she's the wrong religion, but he just really doesn't care for women that much. And Fergo gets hit on by the prison guard who forces him into a sexual relationship that he really doesn't want. So nobody gets their way for a lot of this.
Doesn't sound like there were fun and games had by all, huh?
No, they're not seeing the hilarity that is ensuing here.
So you said you would give us a little bit of a reading so my listeners can get a taste of the book. Can you set that up for us, please?
I'll just read the first couple pages here. And I started rewriting this book after I started working for a magazine, so I have all these little subheads because I thought subheads were cool. So the first subhead is A Hard Welcome to the Palace, and somebody says, "You're already getting sexual." I'm like, no, that's not what I meant. But anyway, the iron door slammed hard on the two new prisoners. "Consider yourselves lucky," a woman said from the other side. "The queen wants you dead." They looked around the room, from the arched iron door to the damp stone walls to a small high-barred window at the back. A few rays of sunlight struggled through. "We're lucky to have that," Lex observed. "It's dark in here," Fergo said. "Well, it's prison. It's supposed to be." Fergo walked around the cold stone floor. Almost 10 paces. At least it was a big room. He ran his fingers across the stone, clammy rock against smooth hands, water eking its way through a structure that was hundreds of years old. "It's damp," he said. "We'll catch something." "Might be the only water we get," said his partner. Lex, always the strong man, or at least faking his strength, Fergo thought, trying to get Fergo to do the same. But they had no choice if they were going to survive this. "There's only one bed," Fergo said. "I'll sleep on the floor." "You'll catch something on the floor." "Well, we'll catch something anyway. It's either me or you." Fergo felt guilty, but he couldn't cede his prize. He turned away, eyeing the mattress. How old was it? A long, sad journey from his house and his life back east in Escaman, for certain. Seemed so long ago. Lex bolted over and hopped down on the bed. "Good lot you've got here, sleeping so close to the maggots," he smiled. "You can have it." "Well, you won't need it much. I don't plan on us being in it for very long." "Not a good place to carry on a revolution, is it?" "Well, I don't see how we'll get out," said Fergo. "You enjoy complaining when there's work to be done," Lex said. "Kavra will help us. He will see to us we succeed." Sure, Fergo didn't believe in Kavra. That newfangled one god who loved everyone regardless of sin or sensuality made no sense to him. He heaved a sigh and sat next to Lex on the bed. It was all there was to do. Look at these clothes they give us. He tried to chuckle. Wonder how many other men have worn them, and if they're alive. The palace prisoners were given clothes for two reasons. The better garments they came in with could be confiscated, and the guards could more easily identify them should they try to escape. They were each given a loincloth along with a dark brown robe that, though pretty shapeless now, was supposed to drape easily over the body. These were so torn up, neither of them could fit his on very comfortably. Maybe at one time they were another color, maybe one time the height of fashion. It looked pretty much like the staple outfit in their country of Claygora, but it hung much finer on a free man. Usually there weren't bloodstains, and usually they couldn't feel sweat clinging to them from some past terror of some unknown frightened prisoner. There you go.
Yuck!
Ew. I tend to like putting people in smelly places, and I don't know why, but yeah.
That's such a strange compunction.
Yeah, some of the short stories I've written recently, even if they're just walking down the French Quarter of New Orleans, it's like you can smell the seafood places and the garbage, and it's because it's a big part of how things affect you that you might not really think of.
Have you written fantasy before?
I had a little bit, but nothing quite to this extent, really. It's just sort of, like I said, it kind of came out from that dream, and like you, I was always interested in the old Greek mythology and Romans and just life back at that era, and so it all kind of came into this.
What kind of books do you tend to read?
Well, a lot of nonfiction. I'm into history a lot. I like to read histories of places that people don't normally think about, like African history, or I just, in fact, for another book I'm working on, read a book about the Spokane Indians and their history and that kind of thing. And so that's a lot of what I read. And I don't have like a genre that I stick to, really. I just kind of see what I like and pick it up.
So you write nonfiction for a trade magazine. Do you see yourself writing any other nonfiction?
Well, I haven't at this point. There was a time I thought about it because I write about paint, and I was thinking of taking an issue like the lead paint issue and kind of turning that into a book, but I didn't. But interestingly enough, when I started working for the paint magazine, I incorporated some of that even into this prophecy, because I talked about like the clay color people painted with or various other things like that, that it kind of almost more influences me in fiction than I think the other way around.
Since you deal with color all the time, do you find yourself analyzing the environments that you're in, or when you're in a museum? Do you feel you experience it differently because of your profession?
It could be. I have a very different, what's the word here, viewpoint, or I see coloring differently than a lot of people because I like a lot of it. I like bigger, bolder, brighter colors. And when people ask me about color, I say, you need to come over and see my house and then ask me, because I've got like 10 colors. I got red and yellow and I got blue curtains, and none of it goes with anything, but because of that, it all goes together. But basically, yeah, I've been telling people for 20 years with the magazine, don't be afraid. Be yourself, go with your heart. Don't worry what Aunt Martha's going to say when she walks into your house. So I think I have a view of use color to be you versus use color to be afraid of what someone else is going to think.
What are your tastes in television?
Lately, I like the cop shows, NCIS. I can watch forever. Law and Order, that kind of thing. I used to like comedies, but they don't seem funny anymore. So,
what's the point?
It's like they're just not. But yeah, I like more of the dramas, and I don't watch TV much at home. Me and my partner tend to click on YouTube documentaries, and he can hook up the computer to the big TV screen, and so we watch a lot of things like that, either nature stuff or Vice News or just various silly stuff. He likes Wendy Williams, so I see lots of Wendy.
So what's something that you've watched recently with your husband?
Well, he's out of town this week, and he's been in school studying, actually got a history degree. So he likes watching history documentaries. We watch a lot of stuff kind of like that, or just silly things, but we tend not to actually just turn on the TV and let it play. He's actually the drummer in our band, and when he's not in school, we play music a lot and that kind of thing.
Do you find that your musical intelligence informs the writing that you do? Do you experience narrative differently? What are some of your idiosyncrasies? Like, how does it affect your worldview?
I think so. I think I write differently than a lot of other people. The book I wrote, well, actually, I wrote the book after this, but it got published before, is called Star Brian, and that's the main character's name, and it's set here in St. Louis. And Jerry Wheeler, who you probably know, he reviewed it, and he said it was a jazz novel because of the rhythm of the book and how it just randomly went off into various improvisations and came back. So, yeah, perhaps so.
That is such an awesome review. I love it. So, unfortunately, our time together is coming to an end. I enjoyed having you on the show and listening to your point of view and your thoughts on music and mythology. It's been a pleasure.
Well, thank you for having me on the show.
Jerry has been very kind and provided me with some MP3s of his music, and you can look on thelizmcmullenshow.com and find those songs and download them for free. It's been a generous thing for him to do, and I know that you'll enjoy them.